Have you ever heard the rumors about certain royals or corporate billionaires gathering at secluded estates for midnight ceremonies under the full moon? Whispers of candlelit rituals, hooded figures, and cryptic symbols that nobody dares explain? It sounds like something pulled straight out of a conspiracy novel, yet these stories refuse to disappear. Which begs the question, is there a hidden layer of power and knowledge shaping our world, one that only a select few ever glimpse? Today, we're delving into the shadows of our global society, exploring how history's most influential figures might have leveraged secret teachings, occult wisdom, and even astrological alignments to expand and maintain their power. By the end of this video, you'll have a fresh perspective on whether these esoteric practices are just a collection of myths, or if they hold a key to understanding the very foundations of modern governance, corporate influence, and even our personal freedoms. Get ready for a journey into realms where fact and legend collide, and where the truth might be hidden in plain sight. Now that we've pulled back the curtain on how some of today's power players might dabble in hidden practices, let's take a step back and see how this all began. In the ancient world, rulers didn't just rely on armies or alliances. They often turned to what we now call the occult, esoteric knowledge and practices meant only for a chosen few. Think of the Egyptian pharaoh Ramses II, for example, whose grand building projects and well-timed military campaigns were said to align perfectly with star cycles determined by his high priests. The Egyptians believed in astrotheology, a system linking the gods to constellations, and this special knowledge acted as a secret toolkit for controlling both nature's cycles and public perception. Take another empire, Babylon, where the scribes and magi were the king's most trusted advisors. These magi used clay tablets to track eclipses, comets, and planetary movements, weaving celestial events into prophecies that could bolster the ruler's image or warn of impending doom. The biblical story of the wise men visiting the birth of Christ possibly derives from this Babylonian tradition, hinting that such stargazers held a high place in the ancient world. By modern standards, these practices can be seen as combining astronomy, ritual magic, and a dash of psychology, an early form of occult science. Even into the Renaissance, we see the likes of the Medici family in Florence, who collected Hermetic texts, obsessed over alchemy, and employed scholars to translate manuscripts tied to the mythical Hermes Trismegistus. For them, the idea of turning base metals into gold was as much about literal experiments in early chemistry as it was about elevating one's status from ordinary to near divine. This knowledge was guarded closely and kept within exclusive circles, feeding the legend that those who possessed these secrets could bend reality, or at least the perception of reality, in their favor. When we speak of the occult, we're referring to hidden or secret wisdom said to connect the mundane world with deeper cosmic forces. This can include everything from ceremonial rituals to astrological calculations, herbal potions, or symbolic diagrams meant to direct one's will. In ancient times, such information wasn't merely superstition, it functioned as a strategic tool, giving rulers the aura of divine guidance or cosmic legitimacy. It's intriguing to consider how these early methods, once written on papyrus scrolls and clay tablets, might have evolved into the clandestine practices whispered about in modern halls of power. After all, if knowledge truly is power, then hidden knowledge could be the greatest power of all. If you find this exploration fascinating so far and want to see more deep dives like this, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Leave a comment sharing any other ancient practices or legends you'd like me to uncover next. Before we move on to the modern era and the possibility of secret societies continuing these traditions, It's important to recognize that many of these historical accounts walk the line between myth and recorded fact. What's undeniable, though, is that people of influence have always sought ways to transcend normal human limitations, be it through reading the stars or communing with spirits. And if these methods worked, or at least appeared to, one can only wonder how they might manifest in our world today. Stepping into the modern era, it's hard to ignore the whispers surrounding secret societies like the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, or the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn. These groups once attracted the likes of Sir Isaac Newton, Elias Ashmole, and other intellectuals during the Renaissance and Enlightenment periods, but their allure has never truly faded. Today, rumors persist that high-ranking corporate executives and political leaders, allegedly including members of Europe's royal dynasties, take quiet memberships in such orders. Some say they gather behind closed doors to study arcane texts or perform ceremonial rites that echo ancient rituals. In most official accounts, these gatherings are dismissed as mere social clubs with a rich historical veneer. Yet, the secrecy and centuries of mystique around them fuel theories that their real purpose is to safeguard hidden knowledge, knitting powerful elites into an exclusive network that shapes our world from the shadows. One name that often surfaces in discussions of modern esoteric influence is the House of Windsor, the current British royal family. While it's important to stress that the royals themselves rarely comment on such matters, claims swirl on the internet about certain initiations or annual ceremonies designed to maintain tradition or even harness some form of cosmic favor. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, prominent political figures have been tied, at least in rumor, to the Bohemian Grove, a private retreat in Northern California. Presidents such as Ronald Reagan and Richard Nixon are documented to have attended the Grove, though any allegations of elaborate occult rituals remain hotly debated. Critics call these tales conspiratorial nonsense, pointing to a casual, somewhat theatrical gathering among friends rather than legitimate magic in action. Still, accounts of robed figures, symbolic effigies, and late-night performances at Bohemian Grove persist. Throw in the Rothschilds, a banking family whose gatherings and extravagant parties have often been the subject of rumor, and you have a compelling narrative, a notion that the world's wealthiest and most influential people might be weaving remnants of ancient magic, astrology, and Hermetic philosophy into modern decision-making. Are these secret meetings truly an extension of the old world desire to align with cosmic forces, or merely private get-togethers with a flair for the dramatic? As with all powerful myths, evidence is patchy, drawn from second-hand reports, leaked photos, or cryptic references in personal memoirs. And yet, the mere possibility that those at the apex of global society might continue centuries-old rituals to safeguard their status captivates the imagination. If there's any truth to it, these practices may be the direct descendants of the same royal science once guarded by pharaohs and magi, except now they operate behind tinted limousine windows and in luxurious off-limits estates. Whether these gatherings are relics of medieval superstition or something more potent remains the ultimate question. For now, the allure of secret societies endures, reminding us that the human thirst for hidden power and esoteric insight never truly goes away, but merely adapts to each new century. Drifting further into the realm of hidden strategies, many claim that astrology still holds a seat in the boardrooms and war rooms of our modern era. Take, for example, rumors that President Ronald Reagan and First Lady Nancy Reagan consulted astrologers before key appearances or diplomatic moves. While it's often dismissed as mere hearsay, at least one former White House staffer has publicly stated that Nancy Reagan's personal Advisors studied planetary alignments to recommend auspicious times for public announcements. It might sound absurd to some, but it brings to life the old adage, often attributed to financier J.P. Morgan. Millionaires don't use astrology, billionaires do. Whether Morgan himself ever uttered those words is debated, but the sentiment remains, a suggestion that those with the most to gain keep a careful eye on the stars. Stories like these extend far beyond the political sphere. In the world of high finance, there's talk of certain traders who follow lunar phases or even elaborate numerological cycles before making big market plays. Some observers have pointed out curious correlations between full moons and shifts in trading volume, enough to fuel a cottage industry of financial astrologers. While mainstream economists roll their eyes, the fact that anyone on Wall Street would pay attention to cosmic rhythms at all is, in its own way, astonishing. And then there are the more dramatic allegations that before signing monumental treaties or launching critical initiatives, entire councils or corporate boards might gather under a carefully chosen moon phase, convinced that this cosmic window can magnify success or ward off disaster. In an even more mysterious twist, certain accounts suggest these gatherings go well beyond pencil and paper charting. If, as some propose, the human mind can be harnessed collectively, channeling belief, emotion, and imagination into a shared ritual, then an elite circle might stand to gain from orchestrating mass intention at a precise astrological moment. It's similar in concept to group prayer or meditation, except here it's often framed as a form of energy work, deliberately engineered to influence outcomes in politics or business. One of the most striking claims involves supposed moon phase ceremonies tied to major governmental changes, a new law, or the decision to enter negotiations timed to coincide with an eclipse, for instance. All of this suggests that what we sometimes dismiss as centuries old, superstition may still be quietly steering the ship of state, or at least nudging the rudder. If these rituals and astrological considerations indeed hold any sway, it's a modern echo of the practice once embraced by Babylonian magi and Egyptian priests, just dressed in far more sophisticated attire. Whether these stories reflect genuine conviction or are simply expensive eccentricities for the powerful, they add another layer of mystique to the idea that behind every major headline, some hidden hand might be playing a cosmic chess game, guided by the stars and fueled by centuries of occult tradition. Imagine waking up in the morning, reaching for your favorite brand of coffee, and glancing at its logo without a second thought. It might feature a figure seemingly pulled from ancient lore, a stylized eye, or a planet-like ring. You tap on your smartphone to check the news, noticing a sleek emblem on the back, perhaps a partially bitten apple or a minimalist swirl. None of these visuals overtly scream occult, yet the shapes, angles, and motifs could be whispering subtle messages to your unconscious mind. According to some theories, these symbols aren't chosen simply for aesthetics. Rather, they might echo deeply ingrained archetypes, universals that Carl Jung believed dwell in the collective unconscious. When we encounter them repeatedly, especially associated with products we use or services we trust, they can trigger emotional and psychological responses we're barely aware of. If the brand behind the symbol understands how to tap into this archetypal language, they could build loyalty, invoke desire, or even manufacture a sense of belonging. Over time, we as consumers develop attachments that go beyond rational choice, drawn in by deeper currents we can't readily explain. Now, extend that notion to mass media. Television commercials, film posters, political campaign ads, each brimming with carefully selected colors, shapes, and hidden references. Taken separately, these elements might seem trivial, but together they could weave a grand tapestry of subtle influence. An all-seeing eye in a corporate logo might hint at omnipresence or knowledge. nudging viewers to trust that company's vision or feel it's somehow above the competition. A spiral motif, common in nature and esoteric traditions, can suggest growth, evolution, or a mystical journey, subtly framing the product or candidate as part of a transformative experience. Those who believe in these powers argue that if you control the symbols, you control the narrative. When repeated frequently enough, on billboards, websites, packaging, or news headlines, these archetypal cues sink into our subconscious, shaping preferences and guiding decisions. Whether it's a political leader choosing a campaign slogan with arcane underpinnings or a global corporation unveiling a logo laced with ancient geometric patterns, the idea is that they're tapping an invisible current of energy or belief. By resonating with universal themes, creation, destiny, sacrifice, rebirth, they can harness an almost mythic power of persuasion. On an even subtler level, if powerful individuals are aware of timing and cosmic cycles, like launching a major marketing push during a particularly favorable astrological alignment, then the symbolism isn't just visual, it becomes temporal. They're playing with both the collective unconscious and the cosmos itself, gambling that the stars will lend extra momentum to their cause. Even if it's purely psychological, the sense of operating at just the right moment can galvanize teams, boost investor confidence, and create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Suddenly, that seemingly mundane commercial or product reveal feels charged with significance. Critics argue that it's all an illusion, pseudoscience that cunning marketers or conspiracists exploit to sell products or ideas. Yet history shows that symbols and rituals have long influenced societies, from ancient empires to modern nation-states. If those in power, whether a royal family or a billionaire tech mogul, truly believe in these methods, that belief alone might tilt outcomes in their favor. Confidence, especially at the highest levels, can create real-world consequences, sparking public trends, dictating geopolitical moves, or swaying market flows. And so, if symbols do indeed hold sway in our everyday lives, the real magic might be in how these unseen nudges accumulate, gently guiding humanity down certain paths without anyone realizing a choice was ever made. Of course, one might argue that if a small group truly wields substantial power, enough to steer global events or manipulate economic cycles, then guiding historians or archaeologists away from inconvenient discoveries would be equally feasible. In such a scenario, potentially damning evidence or artifacts that challenge official narratives could be discredited, hidden, or simply dismissed as hoaxes. Critics point to alleged instances within anthropology and archaeology to illustrate how the historical record can be blurred. For example, the famous Piltdown Man hoax from early 20th century England involved bones planted to create a fake evolutionary link. While not definitively orchestrated by elites, it proves how vulnerable scientific institutions can be to deception or bias. Another rumor claims that the Smithsonian Institution once destroyed or locked away the remains of giant skeletons found in North America, an unverified story, but one that frequently circulates among those convinced that mainstream academia buries anything that doesn't fit established models. There are also tales of private vaults housing unpublicized artifacts, possibly reinforcing the notion that influential groups can suppress discoveries that undermine prevailing understandings of history or human origins. The mere possibility that powerful figures, be they corporate, governmental, or aristocratic, could exert influence over what is acknowledged as historical fact raises vital questions. How much of the historical narrative do we trust because it is repeated by official channels, versus what might be concealed or ridiculed out of mainstream discourse? The lesson here isn't to uncritically accept every rumor, but to remain aware of how Easily, authority and influence might shape the stories we tell ourselves about the past. After all, if some portion of the elite does believe in or exploit esoteric concepts, manipulating our collective understanding of history would be just another step in extending that control. By consistently scrutinizing claims, demanding transparency, and supporting credible independent research, we can at least strive to keep the historical record open to honest inquiry, even if powerful interests attempt to steer it otherwise. Now, let's pivot from the shadows to the light. If influential circles really do tap into centuries-old arcane knowledge to shape our world, perhaps it's time for the rest of us to consider claiming that knowledge ourselves. At its core, the word occult doesn't mean evil. It simply means hidden. And for generations, anything bearing that label has been relegated to the fringes, often portrayed as sinister or taboo. Yet, when you peel back the layers of myth and exaggeration, practices like astrology, hermetic laws, and even personal alchemy emerge as tools that anyone can learn to harness for growth, clarity, and self-transformation. Consider the possibility that aligning your own life with the rhythms of the cosmos, knowing when to act, when to reflect, or how to direct your intentions, might grant you a sense of agency that mainstream narratives overlook. Hermeticism, for instance, delves into principles like mentalism and correspondence, which some claim can spark real change in your life once you understand them deeply. Meditation and manifestation techniques aren't just superstition. They can help rewire your mindset, freeing you from the rigid scripts our society often imposes. And if these same methods are powerful enough to attract the interest of political figures or corporate moguls who allegedly time deals or major announcements based on star alignments, then why shouldn't the individual have access to that same potential? Ultimately, hidden knowledge only holds sway when we remain unaware. If you believe someone else is using esoteric teachings to manipulate events behind closed doors, the answer isn't to hide or fear these ideas. It's to learn them, test them, and decide for yourself how they fit into your life. By shining a light on what was once considered secret, you level the playing field, removing the mystique that grants any elite group an exclusive advantage. Whether you adopt these concepts for spiritual purposes, self-improvement, or simply out of curiosity, you're no longer passive. You become an active participant in your own destiny, turning the very occult knowledge that once seemed dark or forbidden into a beacon for personal empowerment. Before we wrap up, let's piece everything together. We've journeyed from the sacred temples of ancient Egypt and Babylon to the confidential retreats of modern elites, exploring how astrology, hidden symbolism, and secret rituals might still influence our world today. Whether you see these accounts as tangible proof or elaborate conjecture, it's clear that the idea of occult knowledge wielding real power prompts us to question how often we accept mainstream narratives without a second thought. More importantly, it challenges us to consider how we, too, can tap into some of these age-old insights for our own personal growth and transformation. Now, I'd love to hear your perspective. Do you think these stories of hidden influence are credible, or just colorful myths from history and conspiracy lore? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and if you found this exploration eye-opening, be sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss another deep dive. Next up, we'll go even further down the rabbit hole with a topic you won't want to miss: why magic is real and why it matters. If you think this journey has been revealing so far, buckle up, because we'll be pulling back the veil on the true nature of magic, its historic roots, how it shapes beliefs, and why you should care. Until then, stay curious, and remember that hidden knowledge only holds its power when it remains unseen.